I'll be honest, I usually don't read late-night texts from clients. That's what working hours are for. But something about this one caught my eye. Hey, I know it's late. Just wanted to say thanks. You've been helping more than you know. It was from Connor Hale. Client, recently separated. Ridiculously attractive in that worn down by life kind of way. The kind of guy who had no business making someone like me, his divorce lawyer, feel something. I should have ignored it. I really should have. But I didn't. Instead, I stared at the screen like an idiot, half reclined on my couch. Netflix paused, whiskey sweating in a glass on my coffee table. It was past midnight. He shouldn't have texted, and I shouldn't have been hoping he would again. But I wasn't going to lie to myself. This wasn't the first time he'd crossed the line. The first time was at our second meeting. He sat across from me, eyes tired but locked in on mine. As I walked him through what equitable distribution meant, his voice had cracked when he mentioned the dog he wouldn't get to keep. I saw something in him then, not just the pain, but the quiet way he carried it. It stuck with me. Then came the third meeting. That's when he brought coffee for both of us. Then the fourth. That's when he lingered after our meeting was technically over, asking questions he didn't need to ask, not legal ones anyway. Then the texts started. At first it was things like, hey, can I still file the financials if I don't have the tax forms yet? Reasonable. Standard. Then it became, this feels weird to ask, but do you think I should reach out to him about our anniversary? Or just let it pass? That was the beginning of the shift. That's when I stopped being just his lawyer and started becoming his late-night sounding board. And maybe something more. But tonight was different, because after I didn't reply to his thanks, he sent another. Sorry, that was too personal. You probably get this kind of emotional mess all the time. Ignore me. That should have been the end of it. Instead, I tapped out something stupid. Something I regretted as soon as I sent it. It's fine, Connor. I don't mind. And not even 10 seconds later, he replied, that's the problem. You're too easy to talk to. I closed my eyes. This wasn't normal. This wasn't ethical. But the worst part? I didn't want him to stop. I didn't answer that last message right away. I told myself I'd wait until morning, sleep on it, let the moment pass. But I didn't sleep well that night, not because of what Connor had said, but because of what it stirred in me. I kept wondering what it meant. You're too easy to talk to. He didn't say you're a good lawyer or you're helpful. It was personal, not professional. And that distinction matters when you're the one holding someone's legal fate in your hands. The next morning, I stared at his contact name in my phone while brushing my teeth. Debated blocking him, or at least muting the thread, but I didn't do either. Instead, I texted, don't worry about last night, I get it. I hit send before I could stop myself, my reflection giving me a look like, really? That's your boundary? I know better. I am better. Usually. But something about Connor disarmed me. He didn't try to play the victim in his divorce. He didn't rant about his ex. He just seemed adrift, like he didn't know who he was without the relationship that had defined him for nearly a decade. The next text came fast. You do? Most people don't. And then, after a minute, I've been kind of a wreck. Didn't think it would hit this hard. That part got me, because it wasn't just a client giving an update. It was a man trying to stay afloat, clinging to someone who seemed like a safe harbor. Unfortunately, that someone was me. I started seeing the signs of emotional dependency, or what therapists call transference. And I knew I had two choices: shut it down or keep pretending the line wasn't being crossed. I didn't shut it down. Instead, I texted, it's normal to feel that way. You're grieving, it's not weakness, Connor. I thought that would be the end of it. But he texted back, can I tell you something without it being weird? I hesitated. A full minute. Maybe more. Depends what it is. I think I miss the idea of being loved more than I actually miss him. There it was, the honesty, the rawness. It hit me harder than it should have. I took a deep breath and replied, that's not weird, that's human. No response came for a while. And then, mid-afternoon, while I was elbow deep in a deposition summary, another ping. Do you ever get lonely? I froze. This wasn't about his ex anymore. It wasn't about alimony or asset division or court filings. It was about me. He wanted to know if I felt the way he felt. I typed and deleted 4 replies. Finally, I wrote, I think everyone does. Some of us are just better at hiding it. Again, too honest. I had stepped into the quicksand, and now I was sinking. He replied with a voice memo this time. I hesitated before pressing play, my thumb hovering like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I was alone in my office, door closed, blinds half drawn. No one would hear. But still, my heart thudded. His voice came through, low and hesitant. I keep finding excuses to text you. I know I shouldn't. I know it's not part of this whole thing. But I don't know. You feel like someone I don't want to lose, even when this case ends. I sat there, stunned. Clients don't say things like that, not unless they mean them. Or unless they're lost and just grasping for anything that feels real. But it didn't feel like grasping. It felt like something else. Something I wasn't ready to name. I didn't reply for the rest of the day. I needed time. I needed space. I needed to remember I was a professional, so I did what any professional would do. I drafted a message that sounded composed, clear, and boundary-setting. Something like, Connor, I care about your well-being, but it's important we keep things within the bounds of a legal relationship. But I didn't send it, because later that night, at 11:13 p.m., another message came in. I'm sorry, that voicemail was too much. I was just having a moment. You don't have to respond. I just didn't know who else to talk to. That made it worse. Because I knew exactly what he meant. Sometimes you don't want advice. You don't want someone to fix it. You just want someone who'll sit in the dark with you and not make you feel like a freak for falling apart. And maybe that's what I was doing. Sitting in the dark with him. So I typed, you don't have to apologize. I'm here. And I hit send. And just like that, we weren't just lawyer and client anymore. We were something else. Something not quite defined. Something dangerous. I started checking my phone more often. Not obsessively, not in a clingy ex kind of way, but definitely more than a normal person should. I'd never realized how quiet my evenings were until Connor started filling them with little bursts of something that felt, dare I say, warm. He wasn't inappropriate. Not overtly. He didn't send anything that could get screenshotted and twisted into something scandalous. But the undercurrent of intimacy was there, lingering just beneath every hey and every you up, and every time he asked a question that had nothing to do with his case. He stopped asking about property division, started asking about my favorite movies, what I did for fun, if I ever got bored of being the guy who fixed everyone else's messes. I told him I liked bad horror films, quiet bookstores, and walking to clear my head after long depositions. He told me he hated sleeping alone now. Said the quiet in his new apartment made him feel like a ghost in his own life. We were two men navigating wreckage. His, a marriage. Mine, well, I wasn't even sure what I was navigating anymore. Then came the turning point. It was a Thursday. I remember because court had run long that morning, and I missed lunch completely. I was leaving the courthouse, starving, exhausted, and half scrolling through my phone when I saw his name pop up. Connor, you busy tonight? I stared at the message like it was a loaded question. Because it was. I should have said yes. I should have said I had work, or that I needed a night off. I should have reminded him that we had a professional relationship and that getting too familiar was a slippery slope. Instead, I replied, not especially. What's up? He waited exactly 1 minute. Don't worry, not a crisis. Just figured you might want to eat something that didn't come from a vending machine. My treat. That was the moment. Right there. He didn't say, let's grab dinner. He said, my treat. It sounded like gratitude. It felt like flirting. I sat in my car for a full 60 seconds, phone in hand, heart tapping out this fast, dumb rhythm like I was back in high school getting a message from someone way out of my league. And maybe that's what it was. Connor was out of bounds, out of reach, and technically out of line. But I typed, you're lucky I skipped lunch. You picking the place? He responded with an address. Nothing fancy. A small Thai spot I'd actually been to once before, with tables crammed too close together and dim lighting that could make even the worst days feel softer. I showed up late, not intentionally, just traffic. He was already there when I arrived, tucked into a corner booth, scrolling his phone with that unreadable half smile he always wore when he was thinking too much. When he saw me, he stood a little too fast, waved me over, and when I slid into the booth across from him, something shifted. His eyes lingered on mine longer than usual. I noticed he'd actually styled his hair, not much, but enough to make me think he gave a damn about this being more than just two guys having dinner. We made small talk. About nothing. About everything. He didn't bring up his ex once. He didn't mention the court date coming up or the paperwork still waiting on my desk. Instead, he asked about me. Not just the surface stuff. The real stuff. Why law? Have you ever been married? Would you ever? I answered honestly. Maybe too honestly. Told him I'd had one serious relationship that fell apart under the weight of long hours and unspoken expectations. Said I wasn't sure marriage was in the cards, but that part of me still wanted it, even if I pretended not to. He nodded like he understood. It's weird, he said, setting down his fork, when you realize you did everything right and still lost. His voice cracked on that last word, and I felt it. Deep. I don't think you lost, I said. I think you just survived something no one prepares for. He looked at me like I'd said something that mattered. Like I'd unlocked a door he hadn't opened for anyone else. We sat in silence for a minute, let the buzz of conversation around us fill the space. And then, very quietly, he asked, "Does this feel weird to you?" I should have lied. Instead, I said, "A little." He nodded again, but he didn't pull back, didn't shift away. "Still glad you came?" he asked. I didn't answer right away, but I didn't need to. He smiled, just barely, and the check came a few minutes later. He paid, just like he said he would. After dinner, he didn't ask me to come up. That should have made things simpler, but somehow it made everything worse. We stood next to his car for too long in a half-lit parking lot, both of us pretending like this was normal. Like this was just food between two adults who happened to share a few long hours together in a lawyer-client context. But we knew better. I knew better. And yet, I didn't leave. Connor leaned against the driver's side door with his arms crossed, the collar of his denim jacket pulled tight against his neck like he wasn't sure if he was cold or just uncomfortable with the silence. "You want to get out of here?" he asked. I blinked. "I thought this was you getting out." "No," he said. "I mean out of your head. You've had that look all night. Like you're waiting to punish yourself for something." I looked at him carefully. "I'm your lawyer, Connor. I'm already doing something I'm gonna have to explain to myself later." His mouth twitched at that. Not quite a smile. More like the kind of look people wear when they're holding back things they shouldn't say. "I'm not trying to screw this up for you," he said quietly. "I just don't really know how to talk to people anymore. You're the first one who hasn't made me feel like some broken down mess with a legal tab." I didn't say anything for a second. I couldn't. Because the thing was, I didn't feel like I was helping someone in crisis anymore. I felt like I was falling into one. "I should go," I said finally. He nodded, didn't stop me, just pushed off the car and stepped forward. And that's when he touched me. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even necessarily meant to be anything. His hand brushed mine, just a graze, but it lingered, not long enough to be inappropriate. Just long enough to know it wasn't accidental. I didn't pull away, and neither did he. We stood there, hand to hand, both of us staring at the space between our feet like we were scared of what would happen if either of us looked up. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, withdrawing his fingers. Sorry." I swallowed hard. My mouth was dry. "You don't have to apologize for everything." "I do when I'm making things harder." I didn't answer that, because he wasn't wrong. When I got home, I didn't sleep. I paced. I poured a drink I didn't need. I reread the text thread that had started out as, "Let me know if you need any clarification on the filing," and had become this winding, emotional undercurrent of a man cracking open in real time. And maybe that's what drew me in, not just Connor's face or his body, though yeah, he was objectively stunning, but the way he felt, raw and real, stripped of ego, like he wasn't trying to impress anyone anymore. He texted me the next morning like nothing had happened. "Thanks again for dinner. Hope I didn't overstep." I didn't respond right away, mostly because I didn't know how. There was no easy way to say, "You touched me, and now I can't stop wondering what it would feel like if you really did." Around noon, I finally replied, "Let's try to keep things professional from here on out. It's just safer." I felt sick typing it, like I was slicing through something delicate before I even knew what it was becoming. But I hit send anyway. 5 minutes later, he replied, "Understood, but just so you know, that wasn't nothing for me." And just like that, I was in trouble. Because I felt it too. The next week, I did everything I could to reset. I buried myself in work, took on a couple pro bono cases, skipped lunch with my assistant, avoided checking my texts unless it was urgent. I told myself I had boundaries again. Told myself that what happened with Connor was a moment, not a pattern. But moments don't haunt you unless they mean something. His last message, "That wasn't nothing for me," sat at the top of our thread like a dare I was too scared to touch. I didn't reply, and for 3 days, he didn't message me either. It should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like a silence with sharp edges. Then, late Thursday afternoon, I got a call from reception. "Hey, there's someone in the lobby asking for you. Said he doesn't have an appointment but won't leave until you come down." I already knew, Connor. He was sitting on one of the stiff lobby chairs, elbows on his knees, looking like he hadn't slept right in days. His usual clean-shaven face was shaded with stubble, his eyes red at the corners. But he stood when he saw me. "I'm not here to cause problems," he said immediately, voice low, like he knew I didn't want this in front of anyone. "Then why are you here?" I asked, arms crossed. I kept my tone even. Cold, even. Like I hadn't replayed his hand grazing mine in the parking lot more times than I could count. He didn't flinch. "Because I'm tired of pretending you don't matter to me." My breath hitched. "I hadn't expected that," he continued before I could respond. "I know this is wrong. I know there are boundaries. I've read every headline about lawyers who cross the line. I get it. But I also know what I feel, and I'm not going to pretend it's nothing just because it's inconvenient." I swallowed, hard. "You're my client. Then fire me," he said, eyes steady. "If that's what you need to say whatever this is out loud." The words hit me like a slap. Fire him? It would be easy, professionally. Just a formal letter, a reference to conflict of interest, a referral to another firm. But it wasn't easy. Not at all. Because even as I stood there trying to look composed, my whole body felt like it was straining toward him. Toward something I wasn't supposed to want. "Come upstairs," I said, voice tight. His brows lifted. "Are you?" "Just to talk." He nodded once. "Okay." We took the elevator in silence. I didn't look at him. Couldn't. My office door clicked shut behind us, and I walked to the window just to put space between us. I needed the skyline, something grounded. "I can't be who you lean on anymore," I said. "It's not fair. You hired me to help you end your marriage, not walk you into something new." "I didn't ask for something new," he said, stepping closer, "but it found me anyway." "You think this is real?" I asked, turning around. "You're still grieving. You're raw. You don't even know what you want." "Yes, I do," he said, closer now. "I want you." Silence. I didn't move. I couldn't. "Don't," I said quietly. "Please." But he didn't stop. He stepped right into my space, not touching, but close enough to feel his breath when he said, "Then tell me you don't want me, and I'll leave." I looked at him, really looked, and I hated myself for what I couldn't say, because I did want him. I wanted him in a way that shook me, so I didn't answer, and that silence, That silence was permission. He reached up, slowly, fingers brushing my jaw, tentative, waiting for me to step back. I didn't. His hand settled there, gentle, warm, and my resolve crumbled. Our mouths met before I knew I was moving. It wasn't desperate. Not at first. It was careful, like we both knew what this meant. His lips were soft, his hands still cautious on my face, like he couldn't believe I hadn't pulled away. I gripped his shirt without meaning to, fingers curling into the fabric, needing something to anchor me as everything else fell away. He pulled back first, breath shaky. "That's all I wanted to know," he whispered, "that I wasn't imagining this." I said nothing, because now I'd crossed the line too, and we both knew there was no going back. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my bed, fully dressed, back against the wall, blinds half open to the city lights. My phone sat next to me, silent and glowing like a loaded gun. No new messages from Connor. And I didn't send any either. What could I say? "Hey, sorry I kissed you in my office, but also I'm absolutely spiraling, and pretending I didn't want that is getting harder by the minute." Yeah, not ideal. The kiss had been slow, measured, respectful, but it didn't feel small. It felt like a door swinging open to something we weren't ready to walk through. The next morning, I drafted the email. I stared at the blinking cursor for what felt like hours. Subject: termination of representation, Connor. Due to a developing conflict of interest, I am formally withdrawing as your legal counsel, effective immediately. I will ensure all current materials are transferred to a colleague within the firm who... I stopped typing, because every word felt like a lie. Not legally, but emotionally. I wasn't backing away because I couldn't help him anymore. I was backing away because I wanted to touch him again. Because I couldn't sit across from him and pretend I was impartial. Because my objectivity had officially left the building the second I let him put his mouth on mine. I deleted the email. And then I called my mentor. Stephen had been practicing family law for 30 years. He'd seen it all. Cheating spouses, nasty custody battles, prenup disasters. If anyone would know how to handle this without destroying a career, it was him. He picked up after the second ring. "Morning," he said, his voice low and scratchy like he hadn't had his coffee yet. "You ever gotten too close to a client?" There was a pause. "That depends on what you mean by too close." I didn't answer. He sighed. "Okay, walk me through it." So I did. I told him everything, not in vivid detail. I spared him the parking lot tension and the taste of Connor's mouth still lingering on mine, but I gave him the shape of it. When I finished, he let out a long exhale. "You're not the first," he said, "and you won't be the last. But you need to make a choice. Right now. I know, if you're still representing him, it's unethical, period. Doesn't matter if you're not dating. The moment feelings enter the equation, your judgment is compromised." I tried to write the withdrawal email. And I couldn't finish it. He was quiet for a long beat. "Then you're already in too deep." I rubbed my eyes. "So what do I do?" "Ask yourself this," he said. "Are you more afraid of losing the client or losing him?" I didn't answer. Because I knew. I was terrified of losing him. That night, I went to Connor's place. He buzzed me in without a word. When I got to his door, he didn't look surprised. "I thought you'd come," he said. I stepped inside. His apartment was warm, cluttered, lived in. A half-unpacked box still sat by the entryway. A single lamp lit the space, casting soft shadows on his face. "I'm withdrawing as your lawyer," I said, before I could chicken out. "Effective immediately." He didn't blink. "Okay. I'm referring you to someone else in my firm. She's sharp. She'll handle everything with care. You won't lose any momentum in the case." "Okay. And this doesn't mean I expect anything. I had to draw a line. A real one." He stepped closer. "You really think this is going to stop us from crossing it?" "I don't know," I said, "but it'll at least make it our line, not mine to enforce." Connor nodded. He looked like he wanted to say something more, something deeper. But he didn't. Instead, he opened a cabinet, pulled out 2 glasses, and poured us whiskey. "No case talk," he said, handing me one. "No case talk." I agreed. We sat on the couch in silence for a long time, and then he said, "You scared?" I looked at him. "Terrified." He smiled. "Me too." The thing about pulling the pin on a grenade is, you can't take it back once you do. I'd withdrawn as his lawyer. I'd written the email, signed the handoff letter, briefed my colleague, and officially recused myself from the case. It was the right thing to do. The only thing. And still, that weekend I woke up in his bed. It wasn't some explosive night of passion. It wasn't a blur of lust and poor choices. It was slower than that. Stranger. More honest. We'd stayed on his couch until after midnight, talking about things that had nothing to do with his divorce, his dog, who now lived with his ex, his childhood piano teacher, who once told him he had too much emotion to play anything right, his first kiss at a summer camp when he was 14. Then, eventually, without a word, he leaned into me. Not hard, not fast, just leaned. And I let him. That's how it started. I woke to find him facing me in bed, his arms slung loosely around my waist, his face relaxed in sleep in a way I hadn't seen before. I laid there for a long time, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest, feeling like I was standing inside some invisible turning point in my life. He stirred around 8, opened his eyes slowly, didn't flinch when he saw me still there. "Morning," he said. "Morning." I didn't dream it, did I? "No," I said. "You didn't." He smiled, just a little, and then buried his face in the pillow like he was embarrassed. I don't know why, but it made my chest hurt in a quiet, unfamiliar way. "You okay?" I asked. "I don't know," he said, voice muffled. "I've never done this before." "Done what?" He looked at me. "Started over." That stuck with me all day. We didn't talk about what we were, or where this was heading. We weren't a couple. We weren't dating. But the tension, the will they won't they, was gone. What replaced it wasn't simple. It wasn't romantic comedy magic. It was complicated. And maybe that was what made it feel real. The texts kept coming. But now they were different. No more apologies. No more emotional confessions at 2 a.m. Instead, your coffee's still sitting on the counter, getting cold. Tell me what to make for dinner tonight. No seafood, I swear. Do you want to come over after your meeting, or should I come to yours? He didn't push. He didn't label it. He just kept showing up. And I kept letting him. The problem wasn't Connor anymore. It was me. I didn't know how to let myself have something that wasn't built on control, on rules, on staying behind a desk with a client file between us. I wasn't used to being wanted. Not like this. One night, he asked, "Can I show you something?" We were sitting in his living room. I nodded. He pulled out a small stack of photos. Old ones. Wedding photos. "Didn't think I'd keep these," he said. "But I'm glad I did." He handed me one. It was him and his ex-husband, smiling in a garden. Suits. Matching white boutonnieres. Genuine happiness. "You don't look like someone who got married for the wrong reasons," I said. He smiled faintly. "We didn't. We just grew out of it. Of each other. I think we stopped seeing each other clearly. And then it just fell apart." I handed the photo back. "I'm not trying to replace anything," I said quietly. "I know," he said. "That's why I'm not scared of you." That night, we didn't sleep together. We just lay on the couch, legs tangled, a movie playing we didn't watch. His fingers found mine somewhere around the 3rd act and stayed there. No words, just weight and presence, and something that felt like the beginning of something neither of us knew how to name. 3 months later, I was back in court, not with Connor. I wasn't his lawyer anymore. That part of our story had ended, but as I sat 2 rows behind the bar, watching the final divorce hearing unfold under fluorescent lights and procedural language, I couldn't help feeling like I was seeing the last scene of a film I used to star in. He sat at the plaintiff's table next to my colleague, looking calm, worn but steady. like someone who'd walked through fire and wasn't afraid of the smell of smoke anymore. His ex was there too. No theatrics, no bitter glances, just two men doing what needed to be done. Untangling the life they'd built, piece by piece, with the last few legal knots being cut in the presence of a judge. The whole thing took less than 20 minutes. When it was done, Connor didn't look back at me. But outside, on the courthouse steps, he waited. We didn't speak right away. We just stood in that gray morning light, a soft breeze rustling the pages of the copy he still held in his hands. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, it's weirdly not awful." "Good." He looked at me then. "You showing up today. I didn't want you to do it alone." He nodded again. There was a long pause, and then he said, "I used to think divorce meant failure, like I'd screwed something up so badly it couldn't be fixed. And now? Now I think it's just a turning point, a place you stand for a second before deciding who you want to be next." I exhaled. "That's a better way to see it." He grinned a little. "Probably stole it from you." He stepped down onto the sidewalk. I followed. We walked without talking for a few blocks. The city moved around us, brisk and indifferent, but I felt oddly still beside him. Anchored, even. We ended up back at his apartment. It wasn't planned. It just happened, like most of the important things between us had. Inside, he poured 2 glasses of water. Not wine, not whiskey, just water, like people do when they've stopped trying to impress each other and just want to sit down and breathe. We settled into his couch, the silence easy now. Finally, I said, "You don't owe me anything, not after today. If this is where things start to shift again, I get it." He gave me a long look. "Do you think I've just been surviving on borrowed time? I think you've been healing, and sometimes healing looks like leaning on someone. But if we're going to be more than that, it has to be real." He set his glass down. "It is real." "Then let's stop treating it like a complication." Another pause. Then he stood, stepped forward, and knelt in front of me. Not dramatic, not romantic, just honest. "I don't know what comes next," he said, "but I want it to be with you." I felt something shift in my chest. Not a spark, not a fire, a settling, like I'd finally arrived somewhere I'd been walking toward for longer than I realized. I pulled him into a kiss. Slow, sure, grounded. Not the beginning of something reckless, the continuation of something already earned.